Hi, welcome to the November 24th Club Cubase Google Hangout for 2020. I'm going to do a quick test and make sure my audio is coming through fine. And we'll get started here in just a few minutes. Just refresh my browser. Hi, welcome to... Okay, so audio seems to be coming through fine. My name is Greg Undo. I'll be the host for the Hangout today. If you're watching this live, you could submit questions in the live chat field and we'll go through them. You could also submit questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. If you are watching this offline, you may want to skip ahead 9 or 10 minutes. And because we're going to be getting people logged in. So if you could if you're watching this not live, make sure you feel free to go ahead and jump ahead. So once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work as a product specialist for Yamaha Corporation of America. I focus primarily on Steinberg products, and I'll be the host for the Hangout today. I'm presenting from the United States outside of Washington, D.C. area in Alexandria, Virginia. So if you're watching this live, if you want to let us know who you are and where you're from, and also if this is your first Hangout, we can go ahead and get started in a couple minutes. We'll let people get logged in. Just one quick note, in the United States, we have the Thanksgiving holiday starting. So it will be Thursday, so we won't be doing a Hangout Friday. So I'll probably just be doing some other work, but it's kind of a holiday here in the United States. I realize it's probably not that in other countries. So just wanted to let people know that we will probably, resume the Hangouts starting next Tuesday. So just a quick heads up, I think that'll be December 1st. But let's go ahead and take a look and see who is here on the Hangout so far. All right, so we have Carlos from Colombia. All right, so we have Ace. All right, so I believe he's in Texas. So we have DM from London suburbs. We have San Francisco. All right, so we have Vienna, Austria. Okay, so we have Chile, Milwaukee, Sweden. All right, so we have Walter from the St. Louis Club Cubase chapter. It was nice to kind of jump in for a quick Zoom version of that a couple weeks ago. All right, we have Chile. All right, so we have Chris from Los Angeles, who's living in San Diego. All right, so we have Glenn Suffolk, a fellow Virginian. All right, so we have Amsterdam. Okay, so we see Captain Energy Music, Terry Dean. We have Athens, Greece. We have Chicago, Stockholm. We have Jan from CubaseIndex.com. All right, so we have Joshua from Austin, Texas. We have Norway. All right, so we have Seoul, Korea. All right, so we have Moldova in Eastern Europe. All right, good to see Pablo on the Hangout. All right, so we have India. Okay, so all sorts of people getting logged in. All right, so California, we have Robbie Bowling from Dallas, Texas. All right, Jay from Connecticut. All right, so Denmark, Berkshire, UK, from Newcastle. All right, so we have Chris, we usually see each other at NAMM. It's going to be all virtual this year. Okay, so we see question on Spectral layers. We have Canada. All right, so we have Israel, Germany. All right, wait just a couple more minutes and get some more people logged in. All right, so we have France. All right, so Jason from South Shields, England. So a couple little things, some little housekeeping before we get started. So my family, like many people working during pandemic, my family's at home. So my son may interrupt. I'll try to keep the interruptions as minimal as possible. You may also hear some noise. My wife is working directly above my office as well. So she's on conference calls and meetings throughout the day. So I'll apologize for any of those distractions. Also, we'll try to get through all the questions in a chronological manner. So if you, and the ability for people to ask questions is generally much faster than my ability to answer all of the questions asked. So if we could try to refrain from, if you have a question, and if we could try to refrain from asking the same question repeatedly, that would be helpful. And sometimes it's also helpful if you say, I want, I'm running Cubase Pro 11 or Cubase Artist 10, and which operating system you're running. That could be helpful too. Okay, we'll just see Millard Brown from Pennsylvania, Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas. All right, so someone else from California. Okay, so we have Rockbeat 99. It's Christian from California. This is first Hangout. So once again, if it's your first Hangout, just let us know. Okay, so just seeing some questions on Steinberg plugins about undo, redo. So we'll show you how to do that. Pablo is looking for Gareth and Jazz Dude. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. We have a lot of questions to kind of go over. So let's go ahead and take a look. All right. So question. When someone sends me a short film in QuickTime, MP4, AVI, H.264, etc., I play it in VM Player. It plays perfect, but why in Cubase playback is slow and frames are lost and it stops suddenly? So this could be just how the video is, video files are a bit different because it could really matter about the encoding and decoding on the video. So, unlike a WAV file that is a standard that will play back in any application that, will play back a WAV file, you may need to have different encoders and decoders to kind of compress, to encode, and then to decompress or decode that particular file. So depending on how that video is sent to you, it can play back in, other file formats, or just playing video that aren't worried about synchronizing it to an audio engine. But if you go to the Steinberg website, here you can see not only the codec, but and the different containers that you're going to have. So, this article here, if you just do a quick Google search for video support in Nuendo, Cubase, Wavelab, and Dorco, this will kind of walk you through all of the frame rates. And you could use like a free program to often just reconvert it. But often when it's kind of dropping scenes, it's because someone maybe it's trying to decode it too much, or so just kind of look through this website. Just do a quick Google search for video support, Nuendo, Cubase, Wavelab. So a lot of times people, it's very common for an H.264 .move file for like QuickTime. So but as you can see, there's, different codecs as well as your containers. So you want to make sure that those are kind of aligned with the video file. You may just have to reconvert it. And I think once you reconvert it, that should make a difference. And also, depending on your video card, sometimes you may have a video file that works great in, I've had people send me a video file works, great in Mac, and then you put it on PC and you have to make adjustments in the video card for optimizing it for video. So, check out again, if you go to this website, this will kind of walk you through, the different video frame rates and codecs and containers. So. Okay, so question. Hi, Greg. How are you? Hope you and your family are well. We're doing great. Thanks for asking. Cubase 10.5 and 11. Is it possible to save my favorite effects plugin that I often use somewhere so I can load the group on new projects? So I'll just quickly switch. I'll exit out of Safari here quickly. So I will switch projects here. So if you have kind of like, you have, your favorite sets of plugins, you could, load those up. So once you have, this kind of setup, you could save, effects chain presets. So let's say if I have a number on this particular kick drum, I have a number of inserts. So say, okay, I want to do just a little bit of, graphic EQ, and I wanted to run this kick through maybe Squasher. And at this point, you could just save these as effects chain presets. So if you click just to the right, the icon to the right, you could save this as an effects chain preset or recall effects chain preset. So you could save, load, or you could actually just extract it from track presets as well. So at that point, if you have kind of your favorite go-to plugins, you could just see all of your different effects chain presets. So, and even now I could say, let's save this and we'll call it November 24th. And this could be multiple plugins, and I will go ahead and reset the channel. So let's go to our user presets and let's go to our effects chain presets. And at this point, I could just say November 24th, and I could just drag that directly on, and all of my plugins will be recalled that easily. Okay, so question, can I ask a question? I'll ask anyway. In Cubase 11, preferences, MIDI to MIDI file, import function, destination, Halion Sonic SE. Anyway, can I change that to Halion Sonic? Thank you. So it's going to be fixed at Halion Sonic SE just because at that point, it's intended that you could load it up. And if you're not familiar with this particular preference, we can go to MIDI file, and here, when we import a MIDI file, we could have it go directly to load up the sounds in Halion Sonic SE. So Halion Sonic SE is really just a bit of a subset of Halion Sonic. So, there's not going to be any difference in quality or sounds. It's going to play back the general MIDI bank in that particular instrument, but there's not going to be any changes in sound quality or instruments. It would load the same instruments if it was in Halion Sonic SE and Halion Sonic. The main reason why it goes to Halion Sonic SE is because that comes with Cubase. So they know it's kind of a known entity that every Cubase user has a license for it that's available. So that's why it kind of goes to Halion Sonic SE, and it's not really set up to, you could obviously, duplicate tracks and load up the same sounds in Halion Sonic, but there's not going to be any, sound difference or kind of workflow difference really between the two, contrasting Halion Sonic and Halion Sonic SE. All right, so just see hi from Vienna, Austria. Is anyone else knows that the I/O settings, at least with my RME, U audio aggregate, the names of the ports don't display anymore? I guess I found a bug. I don't have two audio interfaces kind of connected currently, but I could do a quick search after. But if anyone else is running an aggregate device, if you want to email me, Stefan at clubcubase at steinberg.de, I could hook up a couple interfaces and kind of see if I could get the same behavior. But it's really kind of the port names kind of show up through the computer's operating system. So, okay, so we have from Scambot Terminator. Hello, Greg and everyone. Question. Greg, I'm using a Nectar Panorama P4. Somehow, in some of my projects, I must have changed some setting where the play and record functions no longer work on the P4. They work in earlier projects, so I figured it was some setting to change. Need your help. Thank you. So probably the settings, if it had changed, and when you mentioned like the transport controls, if you go to your studio setup, and probably I think that the Nectar is going to be using the Mackie control. And at this point, you want to make sure that the settings that you have in the Mackie, the ports that you have in the Mackie control are set up. So I think it's going to use the Mackie control for transport, and make sure that you have it set for your Nectar controller there, that you have the right MIDI ports that will be set up. And you could set up, different user commands if you wanted to. But I think that most of the time the transport will be set, and I would just make sure that this MIDI communication in and out port for the Mackie control is set. And there may be a different Nectar setting for transport control, but I would just make sure that the MIDI communication is set. And you could actually just, when you go to studio setup, just kind of click directly here and then make sure that the correct MIDI ports are assigned. Okay, so question, Greg, when I'm adjusting the length of a recorded part, if I set within the MIDI itself, the part disappears. How do I correct this? So let me just take a quick look. So it's a excuse me. So I will just add a quick instrument track. Okay, so all right, so what I'm going to do is just come over here. So I'm not sure if you're setting. So let's say if I, all right, so I'm just going to read it again. I'm just going to give a quick cough. Hang on. All right. Sorry about that. All right. I'm adjusting the length of recorded part. If I set length within the MIDI itself, the part disappears. So let's say if I adjust my length here, so I will just. So as you can see, like, these MIDI notes may disappear on a part because they're outside of the length of the parts. So you see when those notes turn white, at this point, those parts could be kind of orphaned. So make sure that, I'm not sure if you're adjusting the length from directly within the editor itself. So let's say if we go to kind of full screen. So let's say if we adjust, so I'm not sure if you're adjusting the length from the project window or if you're adjusting the length from if you have notes selected here and adjusting the length, where it's going to actually just kind of change how long each of the MIDI notes is. So maybe if you could just kind of let us know where you're adjusting the length, that would be helpful. Okay. All right, good to see John Costigan. All right, so we have Agent K. He's often very helpful for doing some moderation for us. All right, see Taylor from Pine Grove, Pennsylvania. Taylor, I'll email you, but I should have some time tomorrow. So if you want to do a quick remote session. All right, so we see Sir Robert in Atlanta. Okay, how would I set up a key command to toggle between manual and tape machine style? So let's see if we could set this up. I'll go to my key commands. And let's take a look under preferences. I'm just going to make sure where it's at first. Make sure I'm looking in the right area. Okay, so we'll go to key commands to preferences. All right, so let me just see if this key command switches I'll set up a keyboard shortcut for this. Okay, so if you go to your key commands, and you'll see VST auto monitoring, set that, and then as you hit the key command, it'll cycle. So right now we're in manual, while record enabled, while record running, or tape machine style. So you could toggle back and forth between those 4 different monitoring styles, and you'll see it kind of listed there between those 4 different monitoring styles. So once again, under key commands to preferences and VST, and then go to auto monitoring. And if you wanted to create a macro to go, like hit that function twice to kind of go back and forth between 2 different, between manual and tape machine style, you could do that. So once you have that, just kind of, you could cycle back and forth and see which mode you're currently in for the monitoring. But you could kind of toggle back and forth if you wanted to. All right, so just seeing a comment from Tim, loving Cubase 11 and nice Black Friday prices. So it's great. So if you're not aware, check out some of the Black Friday promotions. So, if you want to get Spectral layers, Dorico, Absolute 4, I think the Iconica library and other stuff, you could get, you can get those at 50% off. All right. So we see Soren from Sweden. All right. I see a comment from Chris. Comstock Cubase just keeps getting better and better. I think the developers and the planning team have done a great job with Cubase and Nuendo, which they kind of did unveiling of today for Nuendo 11. Okay, so question from Terry Dean. Is there a way to sort tracks within a folder, name, color? Can't seem to find anything sorting tracks within the logical editor either. So I don't know of a way to really kind of, sort tracks per se, to move up. You could do stuff like select tracks based on criteria or, but let me just see, you could select tracks by the criteria. So if you wanted to, come here and go to your project logical editor, you could choose to select, and then you can say media type is equal, or container type rather, is equal to track, and name, contains, or you could come here and just say name contains, so say kick, or so, and then you could just come over here and kind of, select all the different naming criteria. So let's say if I want to come here, we could also say, name contains snare, so, you could do stuff like this, but it won't, while we could come here, so say, and we'll say, and I'll just get rid of this, and so now I could select all my kick and, snare, but let's just say I'll just call this SN like we have in this example. So this way you could kind of do stuff, but it doesn't allow, then you could manually sort it, but there's no sorting functions within the project logical editor that I know of. Okay, so having Capt Energy Music wishing us me and the Steinberg family happy Thanksgiving. So thank you for that. All right. Good to see Pablo on a Hangout from Galicia, España. All right. So we have Cavane from Chicago. Good to see you. We have Jan from Stockholm, does a Cubase index. So if you want to search for different Hangout topics, you could do that on cubaseindex.com. It's a great resource. Okay, so we have Michael, who's an American retired living in Moldova in Eastern Europe. It's great. All right, going through. See Jay wishing my son just a Lego Master Engineer Apprentice over Thanksgiving. So yeah, I'll have to go get him a new Lego set. Keep him a bit occupied. Okay. So you just see Jamie Robertson from Newcastle in England with a version 11, which won't install and run. So if you want to email me at clubcubase at steinberg.de. I'm not sure if it's you're not able to download it through the download assistant. One tip that a lot of people found that seemed to make a difference for a lot of people is making sure that your actual computer clock was set correctly. So if that was out of time, that was throwing off some people's. But there's also just kind of a generic download link. But if you need more assistance, just reach out, Jamie. All right. All right. So we see Hannah from Syria and Germany now on a Hangout. All right. Okay, so we have a question. How do you return to the sample editor after using spectral layers? Okay, so this behavior could be a little different in version 11. And versus 10.5. So what you'd have to do in 10 is kind of just do a quick render in place. But let's say if I have just a little snippet of audio here and I wanted to take this into my spectral layers, we can go to audio, to extensions, and I'll just load up spectral layers. And as we have this in, and so let's say see all my spectral layers, I click on remove event. And then when you double click on it again, you're back to your normal sample editor. So, and with version 11, I think, to apply the spectral layers, you have to go to the audio and choose to bounce selection. So once you have, the bounce selection from audio, that would then render it. But with version 11, some of the new ARA2 functionality is where you could just say, okay, I'm going to launch my spectral layers extension. And then just click on remove event. And now you could just kind of, as we go to double click on it again, you'll go right back to the normal sample editor. So hopefully that will get you out of spectral layers kind of loop. Okay. As Terry mentioned, you were trapped in spectral layers for your editor. So hopefully that will help. Okay, so we see Millard Brown. Good to see him on a Hangout from Pennsylvania. I'm watching on a smart TV and commenting on a phone. Computer is down because of home renovations. All right, well, good luck with your home renovations. Hope they're done before Thanksgiving for you. Okay, so again, Christian from California. It's first Hangout, so feel free to ask any questions. And feel free to learn lots of stuff. And we hope to see you back on a future Hangout. So question, why does Cubase tell me I don't have space when exporting several stems using the new cues function? It only happens with some types of tracks. What can it be? Check to make sure. I haven't really run into that. When I've seen some queries like that, I would just kind of try a different path. So say if we go to your export audio mixdown, try just putting it into, you could choose the path where all of the files will be going to. So I assume from your question that your hard disk has enough space. I've gotten this question a lot where, Cubase isn't allowing me to do this. And it's like, okay, your hard drive is full and, but, try changing to a different folder in the path and make sure, like, I've also seen some people that may have their left and right locator set for, 24 hours and then, wanted to export a bunch of files, so check kind of the export range that you have selected and make sure that's not out of, kind of out of consideration or atypical. And also just try changing your path and see if you get some different results. Okay. So just see why Steinberg doesn't add the undo redo button on his plugin. So if it's, generally with plugins, I'm not sure if this is with the spectral layer, but we kind of showed how to do that. But let's say if I have, different delay parameters here. Let's say I go to my mix console and I'm adjusting, different parameters here as I work. We'll say, okay, we'll just adjust. But you could have, if you hit Alt-Z, that will be your undo history for plugins. So, you have unlimited undos for plugins and unlimited redos as well. So as you wanted to come here, just Alt-Z instead of Control or Command-Z, Alt or Option-Z. that will allow you to, and we'll just open this up, and I could have my unlimited undo and redo for plugins. It's kind of Alt Option Z or Alt Option Shift plus Z for unlimited undo redo for plugins and any mix console settings. Okay, my chat field just jumped on me. Let me just scroll back. So sometimes when my chat field jumps, it means I'm going to lose some questions. So I apologize in advance if that happens. Okay, just finding my place again. Sorry about that. Okay, so I just see, hello, Greg Grease here, Cubase 11. Tell us about the scale assistant. So, if we have just a quick MIDI part here, I'll just go ahead and load a quick instrument up. Okay, so what the scale assistant is designed to do is to actually just... Okay, so once we have kind of notes within our scale assistant, what we could do is actually define kind of our different notes that are, we'll come here, let's define our key. So I'll just take it to kind of a full screen mixer. So let's say, okay, I want to be in the key of, let's say, E minor. Okay, so I'll just kind of come here. Now, if you played different notes in, so let's say I just had recorded, directly inside of Cubase here. So I'll just... Okay, so let's say I just have my beautiful composition there. And I know that I want this to all be in E minor. One of the things you could do is define your scale. The scale could also be extracted from the chord track if you have that. But we could just say quantize pitches. And I will take every note that was out of key and move it into our defined key. And if you wanted to, you could go kind of very music theory nerdy with this. So if you wanted to add your own custom scale, you could do that as well. So you'll have kind of not only, typical, major minor, but different modes and different kind of international scales. So now we've had this automatically comply to, E minor. And we could also choose to do snap pitch editing. So without that off, I could select a note and move it chromatically. But if I have snap pitch editing on, as I move notes, it's only going to be within the scale. And then there's also kind of a snap live input. So as I, want to play directly within, I could just say, okay, let's just come here and I will record. And as I just play notes, so I'm going to hit F natural and it will just transpose that to be directly within this scale. So that way, if I want to just, play in, different components, if we snap the live input, I can come right over here, and as we play, every F natural will turn into an F sharp. So any note that's out of key. So even when I played an F natural, it just automatically mapped it directly to F sharp. And there's also, and this is a question that people had requested a lot, especially in these Hangouts, where you can say, you know, show notes only within the scale. So we could say, you know, and at this point, we're only seeing notes. So if I'm just kind of entering notes in with my mouse, I can only enter them in within the pitch, or we could also filter to only show notes that actually have pitches on them. So if there's no notes in those particular pitches, we could just hide that, or I want to see all the notes. So that's some of the new scale assistant functionality inside of Cubase. So it's pretty slick. Okay. All right, so we have Lawrence checking in from Rhode Island. So I see a question. Do you offer one-on-one sessions? You're super knowledgeable. So I have people that will hire me as kind of a consultant periodically. So yeah, I do that. So, okay. All right, so we have a question from Michael Champion about RAM. I have LE, all new to me, and I know that I need more RAM. Will I run into problems without adding RAM? It could really depend on how much RAM you need. You know, when you need more memory is often when working with more sample-based instruments. You know, having more memory is never a bad thing. But if you have a minimal amount of RAM, you know, you could generally do audio pretty easily with not a lot of RAM. That's not as RAM intensive. But if you're trying to do like an orchestral mock-up and, you know, trying to do like a big orchestral library, that's when the added RAM will make a big difference for you. So, all right. So we have someone checking in from Dusseldorf, Germany. Never been there, but I always love going to Germany. I missed my trip because of COVID in the spring. Okay, so it says, hi, I use Cubase 10.5 Artist, but often crash after 5 minutes or sometimes 30 minutes. Do you know what the problem may be? Thank you. I've tried the safe mode, but it doesn't work. So, you know, a lot of times if you're doing that, I would check to see, you know, many times it could be a particular plugin that's causing that particular issue. So I would try a session just using the stock plugins and see if you have the same behavior. So, and it doesn't kind of indicate which operating system you're on. But when you run in safe mode, what it's going to do is if, you know, often like when different aspects or preferences in the program get corrupted, safe mode will restart that. But, you know, if you have a problematic plugin and you start in safe mode and you use the plugin, that could still be causing crashes. So I would try to isolate it if you could to just, you know, using the built-in plugins, and then see if you actually, you know, and if you're still having problems, you know, that will kind of point us to maybe a particular plugin. But so if you could try that and let us know, that would be great. See a comment from Terry Dean, you're never going into trouble adding RAM. So that's a good point. Okay, so I have a question. How to pan control room monitor output? When using the control room monitor output function, I think I tried. I cannot figure out how to. So most people don't necessarily try panning in the control room, but, you know, maybe more in the mixer. So let's say if we jump to this project here, and I'll quickly revert it. Okay, so let's say, as we're playing, we could look at kind of our panning, kind of between here. But when we go to the control room is really just kind of outputting what the mixer is sending it. You can do different downmix presets. So if you want to listen to like this in mono. And I guess you could, if you go to the inserts, you could put in a panner directly as an insert effect. So, you could do panner there, but generally it's like I think you'd want to pan, set all the panning in the mix and have whatever panning you have reflected in the control room itself. So, but let me know if I'm misunderstanding, Jan. Okay, so just see, when am I going to be able to plug my brain into it? Cubase 13, I think, I'm sure someone's working on it in Germany now. So, but it's, technology advances are always pretty amazing, especially with kind of what you can do with spectral layers. Okay. Okay, so I see, hi Greg, how can we get the MIDI note parts only after recording with our Apache? I can only do it during registration, but after. So maybe, let me just load up a quick instrument track here. All right, so let's say if I wanted to take this and go to my MIDI inserts rather. And let's just go to, let's say, Apache, and I will just open up a quick. All right, so when we have this, so let's say I'll just solo this and I want to just record. So I'm just going to hold down a chord. All right, so now when I look at the part itself, we see just these two notes, these two long chords, which are triggering the Apache. But it doesn't actually show what's going on with the arpeggiator. Afterwards, if we wanted to convert to the arpeggiator, we could go to MIDI and choose to freeze MIDI modifiers. And then as we look at this, we can see that what kind of the result of our Apache would be done there. Another way that you could do it in real time, if you wanted to just capture what was actually going on, is to just, when we go to the inserts, you'll see this little record icon. So many of the inserts will have this capability, and you click on the record enable of the inserts, and now as I so now as soon as I look at that one particular part, it will, I'll just kind of move it over here. So now the arpeggiator has been recorded kind of automatically just because this little record icon. So this record icon will allow you to, record the MIDI information being generated by our Apache into the track. So if you want to do it in real time, or if you wanted the flexibility to do it afterwards, you could have kind of the whole notes or, the longer notes and go to MIDI and then choose to freeze MIDI modifiers. All right, so we see JVI from Amsterdam. Good to see you. Okay. Hi, Greg. If my MIDI is slightly off grid, example, a little bit early on the beat, is it possible to change the display quantize in the score editor to match the beginning directly on a beat? Yeah, and that's really kind of, the intention of that particular function. I'll just open up a quick project here to show a good example. Okay, so let's say I'll just take this example. Okay, and let's say I'll look at like this Rhodes part here. So don't it make you feel good? So we listen to Rhodes and we look at it, it's going to be, ahead of the beat. Here's ahead of the beat. So a lot of times this is behind the beat. So if we go into, let's say, our score editor, we often get a lot of stuff that looks kind of like this. So I will just go ahead, double click, and let's say I just want it to be a split staff. And let's say I want it to be in a key of, I think this is an A flat. So we could do that. And then what we could do here is just choose a display quantize. So, I could say the smallest rhythmic value I intended was an eighth note. The smallest rest I intended was a quarter note. And then I usually just kind of click on some of these interpretive flags and then hit apply. And then you can see that the notes that were ahead of the beat are now, directly on the beat. And the notes that were, ahead or behind the beat are now on. And now in Cubase 11, a cool function is this overlay editor. So what we could do now is you could actually, activate the overlay editor. And as we just hover over different things, we could adjust the velocity of different notes. But we also have where we could adjust the length of notes. As when we click on M, that's the actual length of the MIDI note. But we could also just, and as we, let's say if I want this to, just kind of come right over here, and we have a D, and this D is how that note will actually be displayed in the, in the actual notation without affecting kind of the rhythmic placement of that particular note. So if I wanted this note to be notated for a half note, I could do that without affecting the actual rhythmic value that we have of the actual length of the note can be very independent of the displayed note. But yeah, the display quantize, that's really its intention. So if you're a little bit ahead, a little bit behind, it's no problem just to have the notation kind of reflect in a more musical representation. So you print it out, the musicians won't hate you. Okay. Okay, so we have a question. Using Cubase 10.5 in some projects, when I use the constrained time compensation, some effects and audio inserts automatically turned off. But when I turn off the time delay sound chops or drops off. So, you know, what that function is going to allow you to do is, let's say, so I have just a quick, like a Rhodes patch here, but let's say in my, you know, master effects. So let's say if I go to my mix console and I'm in my effects here, and I put in a couple of like a multi-band compressor or two, that this is going to add this will add the latency. So some plugins will have, you know, significantly more latency. So multi-band compressor is usually one that's pretty guilty of that. So now if I play my Rhodes patch with these effects on, I have kind of an annoying delay. So so you can probably hear when I hit the note on a keyboard. So you could probably see like the MIDI note message come in here. Or if I want to do it a bit more visually, I could hit the note and it's going to be delayed. So what the constrained delay compensation does is basically just bypass those particular plugins. So now those plugins will be bypassed. And I could play without any weird delays, and I turn that back on. Those master plugins are re-enabled, and now I have kind of like a badly dubbed martial arts film in English from China. So that's kind of the intention. So that's what it's doing, is basically turning off some of those plugins. Okay, reading through more questions. Okay, when recording with metronome, with bar count, how do I set it to start where I want? Because I've tried playing with the settings, but no matter what I put, it always starts at the start of the event. So, all right, so let's say if I have, all right, so let's say if I was, all right, let me adjust some of my settings here really quick. Okay, so now let's say I wanted to, and let's say I had this part starting just as like an empty part. Okay, so I'm just gonna make sure I read this question correctly. Okay, so it says when recording with metronome with bar count. So let's say we have metronome here. The moment I laid eyes on him. Okay, so I'm just getting this set up. Okay, because I tried playing with settings, but no matter what, I put a start at the start of the event. So let's say if this is the event, I could just hit record. And I just kind of record it directly there. So let's say, and it could be, let me just try, and I'll just say for my MIDI recording, that will just merge the events. So I will just start right here and play, and I don't think it's going to jump to the beginning of that part. So I'll just hit record. So it seems like that's recording from wherever I want without jumping to the particular start of the event. One thing to check, in older versions, this behavior had changed, but if you go to transport, it could be that use video follows edit mode may be active. So I think this behavior changed maybe in 10.52. But see if you untoggle that, if that makes a difference for you. Okay. See just a comment from JP Poe, first time seeing live on the latest Cubase. This is great. All right. Okay, so I see, hi Greg, why doesn't my cursor start on 0 when I open a new project? So let's just try. Let's say if I come here, let me just. Let's open up a new project. So I think it's wherever we left wherever the play position was when it was saved. So let's say I'm going to move this to bar 3 and I will save this project. And I'll close that. And let's jump back to that particular project. Yeah, so the play position is from where it was saved last, it looks like, which makes sense. So give that a shot and maybe just, move the play position to the beginning of the project and then save. But sometimes people will save a project and they want it to go to a very, if they're doing a live thing, they want it to start at this particular song instead of the beginning of the project. So every time that they start it up, it will play back from that position. So I think the playback position is just stored with the actual project. Just seeing in our comment for Nectar, they have drivers that will give you its own option under the studio setup for doing the transport control. So thanks for passing on the information. See, Chris Comstock is using the UR824, so great audio interface. So just seeing Terry Dean mentioning about aggregate device port names. So one of the things that, your settings you may want to try from previous versions is, if you wanted to carry the names over, try, one of the things that is included in the profile manager is kind of the IO setups. So you may want to, in the previous version, try going to your edit menu to profile manager and export a profile and then import that profile back into the new version and see if your port names will be carried over. Okay, so question, are there any built-in features in Cubase for remote VST processing or control? If not, do you have a recommendation for a plugin? So, a very popular system is VST, the VE Pro. I think Vienna does it. So, but another system that you could have if you have, one that kind of started the concept was we call VST System Link. So if you have a digital audio connection between two different computers, and this could be a little more involved, but a lot of audio interfaces now don't necessarily have like a spare SPDIF port. They're more common 20 years ago. But what you could actually do with VST System Link is to set it up where you take like an ADAC connection or SPDIF or a Toslink connection between two computers, and they would basically be synchronized, and you could send MIDI information back and forth. But it's basically two computers that you could transmit and send data back and forth between. But probably the more common method that people are using now is a VE Pro, because it works over kind of a standard Ethernet connection. So just see a question: what are the best audio sound cards for Cubase? Cubase can use any audio interface. It really depends on what functionality you need, how many inputs and outputs you need. Do you need to have onboard DSP processing? Steinberg, in conjunction with Yamaha, makes a whole series of audio interfaces, like the URC series, all have built-in DSP. So you could have reverb that someone could listen to without any delay or latency being generated by the hardware itself. You could go all the way up to, like 128 channel Dante recording system. You could have, there's also like the AXR4T or AXR4U audio interfaces. Those are very high end, but Cubase, we invented on a Windows platform, ASIO, and we use any core audio driver on Mac. So it's really, figure out what your budget is, how many ins and outs you need. If you need further, expansion capability, like an ADAT IO or two is very helpful for that. So you could add more mic pre's or more ins and outs later down the road. Okay, so question. I'm using expression maps. Is it possible to exclude legato expressions when using restrict polyphony? I don't think there's a set way of doing that. You could have, I've seen some people make a separate expression map to avoid particular articulations that are maybe or available within a particular library that you don't want to have to access, but I don't know of a way to just exclude all legato when restrict polyphony is enabled. See, Terry Dean, I love the pop-ups when Cubase toggles between modes and stuff. It's very helpful to know kind of what actual mode you're in, especially switching preferences, so you don't have to kind of guess. And if you're going between the auto monitoring styles, you don't want to necessarily have to toggle 4 times to see exactly what's going on. Okay, so see, from Michael Teams, having trouble getting C11 to talk with PreSonus Fire Studio project, no communication light, Firewire communications. So make sure, one, that you have, that's the PreSonus Fire Studio project. I mean, that's probably 12, 13 years old. Make sure that, whatever computer you're running your Cubase 11 on actually has that particular, that operating system works with that particular audio interface. And Michael, see if your audio interface is working to play back system sounds, like a YouTube video or iTunes, and see if the operating system is seeing the particular Firewire interface. So, if you have, so if the computer's operating system isn't seeing it, it's, hard for Cubase to access it if it's not showing up. But, there are dedicated ASIO drivers for it, but it is kind of an older interface. And if if you've updated your computer recently, make sure that, your Firewire card is also, compatible with that particular audio interface. I think the favored ones in the past were ones with like a Texas Instruments, like a TI chipset. So, and I also see Pablo, in the comment below, says to download the legacy drivers. Okay, can anyone help? I downloaded ASIO for All because I didn't have any sound coming out. Works fine, but I can't get any sound from YouTube, let's say. Fix. What you probably need to do is go over here to your studio, go to Studio Setup, select your audio interface. And then from the audio system, and previous versions, this would be kind of down at the bottom, you'll see a release driver when application is in background. So if you have that checked at that point, you could go to another program. The audio drivers are released from Cubase. You can play YouTube and then kind of go back and forth. And there could be a very similar setting buried in the control panel for your audio interface as well. Okay. Okay. Why isn't Backbone on sale, or at least have a discount for someone who has given Steinberg a bunch of moolah over the years? So Backbone is still kind of a relatively new purchase. So sometimes if we release a product and then you put it on sale within, a couple of months of release, then everyone who bought it for a more expensive price, gets upset. And then you just kind of, made customers, who supported you very, unhappy. But, look, because there's always different promotions going on. And I think as we've seen, there's, the Black Friday promotion that's currently going on. But, every month there's different sales promotions going on at Steinberg. So just kind of keep your, keep everything. If you want a discount, it's only $149. So it's a pretty inexpensive, pretty amazing sound design tool. But if you have the patience, you may see it on a promotion coming up. But I haven't looked for future promotions. But if you follow the Steinberg promotions, they kind of vary them. So I see, thanks, Greg, but in Cubase, is there a way to get MIDI notes from those 3-part plugins that generate arpeggios or riffs from single notes? So a lot of plugins can generate, the arpeggios directly in the plugin, but don't output that MIDI information. So if the plugins output that particular MIDI information, and I'll just show you one that does here quickly. And it's really could be a limitation of the plugin itself, because like if I wanted to come, Groove Agent is a good example of this, like the Groove Agent SE that comes with Cubase. So let's say I wanted to go to this particular instrument. So I'll go ahead, open it up. So let's say I have this going on, and if I wanted to record that information, what I could do is set my MIDI input from Groove Agent itself. So just say, okay, there's my Groove Agent, and now Groove Agent is sending the MIDI information out of the plugin directly into the host. So not a lot of plugins do that. So it's really, it could be more of a limitation of what's going on, with the particular plugin. So, but you could check with the documentation to see if that particular plugin has like a MIDI output port that you could select as the input. And if it does, then it's very easy. But, a lot of plugins, unfortunately, don't necessarily have that. Okay. All right, so we have Teaneck, New Jersey, in-house. Okay. Okay, just reading through. All right, so Terry Dean saying he's number 46 on the like button, and he wants everyone to hit the like buttons. All right, and he's coining the term Q Bros for Cubase brothers. So. Okay. All right, so I see Ponzu Music switched to another DAW a couple years back. Want to update from my old version of Cubase Pro 8 to new 11. Cubase 8 is Cubase 8, same version I used years back. Crashes 100% upon opening. So, generally if it's crashing upon opening, it's going to be a plugin that's causing it to hang. But you could definitely upgrade to Cubase 11, and you could start. I think you could do this in Cubase 8 as well, but you could always start with holding down like Alt Control Shift or Option Command Option Shift, and now with the new versions you could bypass all your third-party plugins as well. Okay, so a question, thanks for everything, Greg, but the volume of the control room can also be added as a command from the keyboard and not just from the mouse. Or before we move on to that, so I see another comment from Ponzu Music. I've sent a ticket 2 times to support, to no response. I want to update, but they have not gotten back to me. Don't want the same crash issues I'm getting with 8. So I'm not sure where you sent the support ticket to. Different distributors will have different support mechanisms, but I think in Europe it's going to be handled through Steinberg, Germany. And through different Yamaha distributors in other countries. So. Okay, so again, back to thanks for everything, Greg, but the volume of the control room can also be added as a command from the keyboard and not just the mouse. So I'm not sure if you could do it with a, with a MIDI controller. So if I wanted to come here, so I don't think it's from a keyboard, like a computer keyboard. But I'll take a look and see. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's going to be done from a computer keyboard, but if I wanted to assign like a rotary encoder to it to control my control room, like on my MIDI controller, if we go to, I think we could do that by going to Studio Setup, and let's add a generic remote. And I will do a quick learn function. So we say this is fader 1. So this incoming MIDI message. And what we want to do is so I'll come here to command, control room. And let's see if we could do the. Let's see if the control room volume is in here. right, so let me just, that's not what I'm looking for, but. See if I'm just being. So, but I think, you should be able to kind of do it through here, but I'm probably. So let me just. So, but yeah, I would try in there. I think it's somewhere in there in the control room functionality, but I think I'm just having maybe a brain cramp. But I don't know a way through like a keyboard shortcut to do that. Okay, I see my timeline, just my chat session jumped on me. Bear with me. Okay, so just finding my place. Okay, so I think I'm. All right, so we're making our way back. All right. Okay, so some more questions on Michael Team's Firewire driver. So just see question, are questions in this chat also answered, or do I need to be part of the Hangout call? So there really is no Hangout call. It's just the questions that are in the actual chat field. All right, so yeah, so we're slowly catching up. The JPPO. Okay, so we have how does the quantizer work exactly, and does it work only with MIDI? So the quantizer plugin is, let's say if I have like some drum parts here. All right, so okay, so what the quantizer, is there's a MIDI insert called quantizer, and this is really great for getting different quantized feels. So if you just wanted to come here and add different swing feels, you could just kind of take that. I'll just program something super generic quickly here. All right, so let me just. Okay, so I'll just quickly program just one Let me just turn my snap on. All right, so let's say I'll just do a quick, super generic. And let's just go ahead and put in. So when I take my quantizer off, let's say, when I just go to the swing feel, like especially on a hi-hat. So when I just kind of come over here, you can kind of hear that what the quantizer plugin is kind of doing swing-wise. So that's going to allow you to kind of do that. Now, if you wanted to apply, like, you know, maybe a different feel on drums, you know, so let's say if we're here in the sample editor and I wanted to go to, you know, like this particular drum loop, you go to kind of your, you know, once you kind of have different hit points set up, you could also just come over here and say, okay, I want to take this as 16th notes and let's put it into audio warp. And at this point we could add more swing here. So now we could just kind of, and you could adjust kind of quantize settings just for, you can see kind of adjust there for audio. So, but with MIDI, you know, the quantizer plugin is going to kind of just give you, you know, very quick swings of something that's programmed very straight. Okay, so is there a chance to change mouse modifier for scrolling, zooming horizontally? For example, scrolling horizontally without pressing the shift key. So as we're doing this, you know, we could, you know, if we wanted to zoom in, you could just hold down like the control or command key just to zoom in horizontally like that. You could navigate using the shift key. So now if I wanted to move in time, I could hold down the shift key. If I wanted to just, you know, zoom in, and let's say navigate. So let's say we'll zoom and now navigate holding down shift key. Let me just adjust. So that way you could kind of toggle back and forth between kind of different zoom. So, so if it's going to be sometimes some of the mouse modifiers, I think those are fixed. But I think if we go to some of the mouse modifiers, if you can't change them, if you go to preferences, like for some of the different editing functions, you go to the tool modifiers. And here's where you could, you know, tweak, but I don't think that the zoom is kind of set here. So, but I think those are kind of fixed. Okay, question. When I'm exporting stems, I want mix bus effects to behave like everything is hitting them like it is when I listen to the whole mix. Is there any way I could achieve that? By the way, I rely heavily on stereo bus processing. So, you know, as you do this now in Cubase 11, this is one of the new things that's in Cubase 11, and you go to the export audio mixdown. And once we're here at the export audio mixdown, so let's say if I'm doing, You know, if you're doing stems at this point, you could just say, I want to take this and you want to include the master group sends, the master, the groups, and the sends, and that will, embed all of the, all of your master effects chains on the individual files as well. So just make sure that under effects, you could choose to have it be disabled. So your mono tracks stay mono, your stereo tracks stay stereo. You could include your inserts and your channel strip, as well as your groups, your sends, your DSP, and, so that'll be all of your sends and now your master effects. So that's one of the new things in version 11. So for many people, that's quite worth the price of the upgrade. All right, good to see Mandy Lane on a Hangout, and we have Michael Marshall from Somerset, England. We used to have an employee at Steinberg, used to do all the trade show setup, named Michael Marshall. So my question from Michael Marshall, my VST Connect Pro doesn't work with Cubase 11. Any ideas? So make sure that you have the versions matched, so when you go to your VST Connect, with, I think that this is going to give you VST Connect SE, and you could check kind of the version number if you want. So as soon as we kind of click here, you could, check the version number and make sure that this version number is matching the one that's that you have for your VST Connect Pro. So recently, VST Connect Pro was updated to version 5 to include video for people doing remote ADR work. So make sure that that version number of your VST Connect is the same with your VST Connect Pro. Okay, so we have a question. How do I export multi-tracks with all the plugin settings embedded on them? So just kind of like what we're showing before. So if I wanted to, let's just jump to where we have some multi-tracks here. All right, didn't like that project. Bear with me just a second. May have to restart my Mac sometimes, running all these things in the background to make the Hangouts happen. I know I have a messy desktop. All right, I'm going to just, if everyone could just bear with me, I'm going to restart my computer and we'll get it kind of, so just hang on for a minute or two. And I'll be right back. So give me like 2 minutes to get everything rebooted here. All right, I'm just going to do a quick audio test, make sure you guys can hear me okay. I'll just give it a second here. All right, so okay, so if so we had a question. So how do I export multi-tracks with all the plugin settings embedded on them? So, and this is something else that had changed with, make sure that this is all set up. So this is also changed in version 11. So if you wanted to have kind of the individual drums that will be set, the individual effects on each individual track when we go to the export audio mixdown. And again, when we click on multiple, we could say I want to select all of my different, audio channels, virtual instruments. And then under the effects section, just make sure that you have groups and sends activated. And then if we had, the same reverb going to the kick and to the snare, but more the reverb in the snare and less in the kick, but it's going to the same reverb send, at that point, it will just, have more reverb in the snare and less in the kick, and it'll be rendered that way. So. Good to see Peter Schlosser on the Hangout, and it's a great comment. RAM is like a TV. No one ever said, I wish I bought a smaller TV. So that's a great point. Okay, so I see a question from Paul Rose. My Acoustica audio plugins crash Cubase. Is there a known fix for this? I think a lot of that is going to be kind of out of our control. So you may want to check with Acoustica Audio and see if they've done anything. So... but I've heard that they were problematic for lots of people. So, okay. So, question: Say me, please. Can I upgrade from Cubase Artist to Cubase Pro? Yeah, of course you could upgrade from Cubase Elements to Pro, Artist to Pro. Previous versions. So we're always it's a great way to go as your capabilities and your requirements increase. That you could. Just simply, grow within the Steinberg family. So yes, you could definitely upgrade from Cubase Artist to Pro. All right, great to see Cayega on the Hangout. I'm missing you up in New York and in DC for our Club Cubase meetings. Hey, Greg in DC. When overlaying a part, MIDI or audio, the part that is to be merged by default is replaced with the part placed on top. So this could really matter depending on your record modes. So if you see it with MIDI, you could have it, put new parts that, will, kind of stack parts on top of each other. You could merge or replace. And when in cycle mode, you could also, have it be stacked or not muted. So those are different options that you have there. So with audio, it's always going to be kind of stacked and not merged, but just go to, you see like your little MIDI record modes here, and you could also access this from the transport menu when you come over here, and you'll see MIDI record modes, and you could just say, and just make that selection there. And that should change that behavior. Good to see you on a Hangout, Kega. Miss sharing a cab with you to the train station in New York. Hopefully we'll be able to do it again soon. Okay, question. Do you know which version of macOS is best for Cubase 11? Version 10 was great on Mojave. No issues with 10.14.6. Now we have macOS 11, so I'm not so sure. Thanks. It's the Mac OS has become a bit, a kind of a moving target, but I'm running Mojave primarily because it's what our IT department at Yamaha, and it's not necessarily for what's, best for Steinberg, but our IT department, when I got my new computer, still didn't have everything working on a corporate, infrastructure for Catalina. So that's why I'm on Mojave. I generally try to stay with my Mac OS as long as I can. So Mojave works great. Cubase is designed to work with, Mojave, Catalina, or Big Sur. But, it's still, many components, third-party components may not work in Catalina 100%. And, while Cubase is, set to work in Big Sur already, your audio interface, your plugins, your DSP accelerators may not be. So it's, so either of the latest 3 versions of Mac OS are great. but just be aware that, you know, all of the other components in your system that you use in conjunction with Cubase may not be compatible. Okay. Okay, so question, how do I get back the cursor on the Cubase EQ channel strip to see what frequency I'm at when hovering over the EQ without turning on an EQ band? So let's take a look. Okay, so I think within, you know, within the built-in channel, you could see. Um, so you want to get back to cursor on the Cubase EQ channel strip to see what frequency I'm at when hovering over the EQ without turning on an EQ band. You know, as you hover here, you don't really see much, but I think maybe in frequency, the behavior may be slightly different. So let's look at frequency. And here you could see in the frequency EQ without activating a band, you know, what frequency it is. And you could see just kind of what actual musical note is with the little music keyboard right there. All right, so hang on, my son is knocking on a door. I'll be right back. All right, sorry for the interruption. I got my son on a TV show for a little bit. All right. So I think with the built, so we get to see it in the frequency EQ, but the built-in EQ, you can see it, you know, by if you go to turn on a particular band. So if you grab it here, you can see the frequencies, but the band has to be activated. So you could see the frequencies there, and then if you want to turn off the EQ band, you could do it just like that. But let me know if I'm misunderstanding. All right. So question, hi Greg, how do I do an audio mixdown using 5.1? So if you have a 5.1 project, so let's say just do a new project here. And I will just go ahead and go to my audio connections, and I want to add a 5.1 output. And we can define this as for our speakers. I'm going to add an audio track, and we're going to have this be a 5.1 audio track. So now we can see as we come right over here, we could just say, so if you wanted to at this point do your mix down, we could just so you could have your 5.1 panning, and then as you get to export, what you want to do is you do your export audio mix down, and you would just choose to export out of your 5.1 bus, and then you could do your surround. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so I see maybe from Taylor, or I just see a quick comment. Wow, it's unbelievable. I have to pay a difference in price between artist and pro. So yeah, there is a price difference between the two. So, all right. So second question from Taylor. Once a preset is set up in the transport and toolbar, can a key command be assigned to toggle or select between them? So I don't think so, but let me just take a quick look here. So I will just take a quick look. I'm inclined to say no, but we may have kind of a workaround. Yeah, what I've seen some people do is to, set up a key command to, I think it's maybe Alt-T for the transport. Let me just find a key command here real quick. Because I think you could set up kind of two different because you could have if you hit F2, you could still have this transport active. And let me see if this could be basically independent. So you could have, different settings in the lower zone transport, and you could hit F2 and see other transport settings. I know some people put this like, right above and, or right below. And at this point, you could just say, and hit F2 and kind of have two different states of the transport bar when necessary. But I don't think there's a key command to switch between different user presets. Okay, so we have a question. Hi, Greg. Is there a way to have SMPTE position stay relative to the bar when changing tempo? Example, if bar 5 is at SMPTE 1 hour at 120 beats per minute, and I changed the tempo of the song. So yeah, I mean the SMPTE time code is independent. So let's say I'll do a 1 hour offset. And I will add a ruler track. Let's add a tempo track and a ruler track. All right, so we can see this is my SMPTE time code position here. This is my measure. So, the SMPTE time code is going to be, the absolute time, so if I slow down, you're going to see the change kind of reflected in the time code because the song is speeding up and slowing down and the time code would be there. Now, if you wanted to have parts not react to the time code, but react to the SMPTE value. So let's say I have a MIDI track here. All right, and let's say I just want to put in, let's say 4 quarter notes. All right, sorry, put it in the wrong part. So let me just. Okay, so let's say I'll put this in quarter notes. Okay, so right now I see that these are, at the time code position. If I wanted to adjust, as we slow the tempo down, that's going to add more time. So, but if we have, and as we, slow the tempo down, we can see that, as we start doing this, we could have the tracks be in musical mode or linear mode. So if I wanted these tracks to stay like these MIDI parts to stay at their SMPTE time code position, I would take this track and put it into linear mode, and then those tracks are going to stay in their exact time code position and won't follow the tempo changes. So, as you slow down the tempo, it's going to affect the position of the timing because, you have more time as the tempo gets slowed down between 2 points. So, but if you didn't want the parts to react, that's when you could place it into where you see this little musical mode will mean that these follow the tempo changes. But when it's in linear mode and I put in tempo changes, that we'll see that those will remain in the exact same SMPTE time code positions. So I hope that makes sense. If not, just let me know. Okay. So I see Taylor mentioning it as UR22C. But if you want to, go through some UR22C stuff, just send me an email. If you have some time tomorrow, I should be pretty open. I have a couple errands to run in the early morning. Okay, so we have a question. Hello, I have delay in my headphone when I'm recording with low buffer size. So I'm assuming it's a wired headphone. But when you're recording with low buffer size, one of the culprits could often be, try to click here and, as we mentioned before, the constrained delay compensation. So try toggling that off. And that way, if you have plugins kind of scattered throughout your mix console that could be causing latency, we could think of almost, like latency as being, almost kind of like a tax, if you will. So as I want to, come over here and we have, a couple of, bigger plugins, so say multi-band compressor, multi-band envelope shaper, some of these heavier ones that when you go to look at it like in a full mix console view, you could actually have a channel latency indicator. So if you're tracking and you have a low buffer, but you have, 123 milliseconds of plug-in processing going on just on a master bus. I know a lot of people will use like mastering plugins and just leave it on there to try to mix toward that. Just hit the constrained delay compensation button. And as you would do that, then that's going to bypass those particular insert effects and do that. And as soon as I toggle that behavior again, those plugins will be, re-enabled so that they're around. So it could not just be the buffer size, but other plugins in your project that are kind of imposing that tax on the latency. So. All right, so I see that Jan from CubaseIndex.com about the panning in a control room insert was helpful for him. That solved his problem. It's great. Okay, so I just see a comment, left and right operation from inside the MIDI. So I'm not sure if that was maybe a comment on another topic or that came up in discussion, but sorry if I'm misunderstanding. All right, so okay, so we have a question. Hi, Greg. Can you please show how to convert audio to MIDI melodically? So if we have a particular project, let me just open one that has some vocals on it. Thanks for all the great questions. If you've learned something new, make sure that you hit the like button and you subscribe to the channel. I get this project loaded up. Appreciate all the wonderful questions. Doing well on time. Okay, so if I have a lead vocal here, we could do this with monophonic audio pretty easily and just go to Vary Audio. So once we've done the analysis of, let's say, our vocal here. It's okay. Guess all along I was so naive. So we could see that. And then once we double click to go into the Vary Audio editor under functions, we could just choose extract MIDI. So go to the functions menu here and extract MIDI. And we could put this on we could include different levels of expression and we could just put it onto a new MIDI track and hit OK. and that will automatically take our vocal performance and turn it into MIDI. So let's go on. All right, so we had the next question. Can you please show how can Cubase convert MIDI to audio? So there's a number of different ways to do this. So I'll just show it in this. So, probably, an easy way is just, let's say I have MIDI that's going out to a virtual instrument. We could do an export audio mix down. That's one method. Probably the fastest method for just a single part is just to choose render in place. And I'll say, okay, I want to take this, and now I just clicked on render in place, and you could have different options to include or exclude different settings, and you could just have the audio rendered directly below, carrying the colors over, all that good stuff. So, try selecting the event, go to edit, to render in place. You'll see your I just did it again, but it meant to show the render settings. So you could do, if you have multiple parts, you could do that, or if you wanted to include channel settings, a complete signal path, master effects, all that stuff you could choose, and what you want to do with the previous event, if you want to keep it, you want to disable, so, different functions there. So that's the fastest way, I think. Okay, so question, how do you input chords played by your keyboard to make chord charts in a chord track? So I will come right over here. Let's just put like an empty chord track in, and then you'll have this little thing for MIDI input and play a chord. So I have it routed to a drum set, so I'll turn that off. So let's say I'll just come here and play a different chord. We'll zoom. So that's all you have to do is just click on your MIDI input and play the chord. So say, okay, we have a chord change right here. Go to the definition, make sure you have your MIDI input, play at least 3 notes. And you could just, that's a lovely sounding chord, B flat over E. All right. So that's how you can do it. So just make sure you have MIDI input on and play the chord from your MIDI controller, and you'll be all set. All right, so we see Gareth K. Music is on. So good to see you on the Hangout. I see Michael is commenting that Pablo is quiet, but I think now that Gareth is on, Pablo will speak up. So, all right. I had fun playing bass on a project for Gareth last night. So, okay. All right. I already supplied a melody for Gareth for his next composition. Okay. So I see, hi Greg, I want to add folder tracks to the export queue. Is it possible? Greetings from Argentina. So currently, the folder tracks are really kind of set up for, on the project window. So, if I wanted to come here and put folder tracks, and folder tracks could be MIDI, could be, a video track. It could be a lot of different things. So it's not necessarily just going to be audio MIDI, it could be effects channels and other things. So let's say if I have these in a folder, so when we go to like our export audio mix down, you don't kind of see the folders as an option, but you can have it to the point where it is, going, where, what a lot of people will do is put their folder tracks and, create a folder track within their template and have each folder track output to its own group track. And then from the group track that you can activate it. And something else that you could do, I'll just show this quickly as well, is there's an option to, like, let's say if you have a folder track and you don't want to necessarily render a whole slew of empty audio files. There is a sync the project selection. So I actually made a project logical editor preset. So where if we had a template that we were working with, and all of a sudden we're just, like I didn't have, let's say, a harp part in this particular project. So I made a project logical editor preset where we said, select tracks that have events. So now all these tracks are selected. And what we could do is when we go to our export audio mixdown, we could click on this, and that would only include those particular tracks that are selected so we don't render empty files. But currently, it's not where we could select a folder, but if you have a template, consider having a group track for each folder as well. So. Okay. Okay, so to see a question. Hi, and thank you, Greg. Do you know if we'll be able to open up the visibility tab to be able to read longer names in the future? So let's go ahead and look here. So I guess if you do have a longer track name, let me just add one here with a lot of. It's my next poem for Gareth's lyrics. So it's just a folder track, but let me just come here and just add a bunch of characters. I will pass that along as a suggestion. So, but I haven't heard of any plans for that, but I'll definitely kind of point it out to them. Okay, so from Jay, I'm not familiar with setting up Spectral Layers Pro project natively, and see it seems quite different, asking for length of time during start. Would it take too long for you to demonstrate? All right, so let's go ahead, and I think I could just open up. All right, so let's say if I have this going on, I will. Let's do a new project. Okay, so. Okay, I probably don't have, let me just. Okay, so like when I just kind of come here, I could just, see all of my typical spectral layers type. Let me just make sure. So I didn't have it like asking for length of time during start. I wonder if it could be like the length of time. Excuse me 1 second. I wonder if the length of time might be perhaps with a if it's a trial license of some kind. So maybe if it's a trial license, that's what the length of time is. But it's pretty much just go hit play into the microphone, and you could kind of do your editing right away with your spectral layers. But if I'm misunderstanding, Jay, just let me know. Okay. Okay, so I just see I lost my Nano Control 2 and pad settings going from 10.5 to 11. So, it's always a great idea. So a lot of your I/O setups and different configurations, go to your edit menu and to profile manager and try, in 10.5, export your profile and import it directly into version 11. And that will probably carry over. So, but if not, it's probably going to be just in your studio setup, and for your for your control settings, you can just kind of find them directly here for your different controllers. You may just have to reassign it. All right, good to see Larry Goldman on a Hangout. Wishing everyone a happy Thanksgiving week. Hope you're doing well. I liked your Eddie Van Halen story you shared on Facebook. Okay, so hi, question. Can you demo how to batch export multi-tracks in WAV format? Mine shows my disk does not have enough space for some reason after the Cubase 11 upgrade. So let's go ahead and I will jump back to this project. It's relatively short. And let's say I'll just, for sake of brevity, I will set up small left and right locators. We'll activate this. Okay, so I want to do a quick batch export of all the tracks, and let's say with all the signal processing. So I will come here and let's add an effect send between all the channels. I'm going to add too much reverb. Okay, so let's say we'll just okay, so now let's say I want to do an export audio mixdown with all the effects, and I'll just put it into a new project. So I will go to File, to Export Audio Mixdown. Sorry for hitting the mic. It's annoying. So I will take all my output channels, all my audio tracks, instruments, my effects channels. I want to include my groups and sends. I'll put it into a project audio folder, like the mixdown folder. And at this point, let's add it to the queue, and I'll just say start queue export. And after the export, let's create a new project. So I'll just come here, start our export. So it's going to render all my drums with the reverb on it and all the different stuff. So all right, just okay, just reading through some of the comments while we wait for this to export. Okay, so I see a comment from Pablo K. Crack L. Greg. I'm impressive. So maybe this is in reference to a song I think you play drums on. It's cool drum parts. And Gareth is claiming credit as a negotiator. So it's fun to play bass, just to be a bass player again. Okay, and I see Michael Teams from earlier discussion made sure his Firewire card had the chipset, the TI chipset. Okay, so now I think we're getting almost done here. So we'll see. All right. Okay, so I'll just go through some more questions here. Okay, so sorry, chose kind of probably too many tracks to do this live, but we'll get it done here in just a second. Okay, we're getting there. So again, just kind of you could select all the different parts on the effects, include all that. But I'm not getting any messages. But try a different path, just out of curiosity. You know, I've seen even in the past some people will copy files over from a CD or DVD, and then the permissions for the files are write protected. So if you try to write into that folder, it may be write protected. But so try a different folder location. All right, so we're on our last file here. And now it should launch and create a new project immediately. Okay, so that's really kind of all you'd have to do with that. So okay, so let's go ahead and move on. So early Hangout today, question on Cubase 10.5. Is it possible to put all channels to EQ first instead of inserts? My template has a lot of channels and it would take a while all at one time. So let's say I will come here. And this might be something you could do with the like with quick controls. So let's say if I have a number of audio tracks. Don't know why I always have to add audio tracks in intervals of 4 to match analog tape machines. Okay, so now when I come here, you know, you could move the channel strip. If you wanted the channel strip to come ahead of the inserts, you could just kind of click here and toggle the signal flow between the two. But let's say if I do this and I'm going to hold down Alt Option plus Shift. Okay, and now and that enables like quick link mode. So now every one of the selected channels switched the signal flow order. So if I wanted the first 5 to be the opposite way, so these first 5 will be inserts first before channel strip, and the rest will be channel strip first. So select all the channels and then hold down Alt Option plus Shift and kind of toggle the signal flow order, and they'll all change accordingly. Okay, just reading through comments. Okay, my chat field jumped on me. All right, I'm just going to find my spot. Sorry about that. All right, I may have lost some questions. Sorry about that. But I saw a question about the before my chat field re-jumped, and I think it's from Lawrence about the DM2000 setting up more kind of functionality for the DM2000 as a controller. So when we go to the DM2000 here, we have, there's going to be 12 function buttons that you could assign here, and you could set it up via the USB port for your control service. So you could have, 12 user assignable functions, but I think that's really all that the DM2000 really offers. So there's some, it's a wonderful console, but, it's kind of, it's not as nearly as deep of a controller as like a Nuage for that. So those are the only additional controls that you could set. And again, you could just access that and you probably have that if you have the DM2000 set, but that's all that the DM2000 software is capable of doing. So. All right, so I see Gareth is the first one to ask when Cubase 12 is coming out, and we'll just say when it's ready. So, all right. Okay, so I just see a question or a comment from Shane Ein. So at Gareth and me, thanks very much for your response. Could you please demonstrate? I've tried but can't get the results I'm after. So I'm not sure. Maybe if you could reiterate what the original question was, because I may have lost a question as it went into as my timeline, my chat field jumped on me. Okay, so I just see a comment from Paul Claridge, and I probably missed the original comment about this, but unrelated, why does it make the piano key stop inputting? So maybe, Paul, if you could ask your question again, maybe we'll be able to catch it before the end of the Hangout. Okay. Okay, so hello, Greg. Is it possible? Can you demonstrate how Very Audio works, specifically the audio to MIDI function, primarily how well the expressive audio transfers as MIDI notes? So, when we're kind of working with Very Audio stuff, one of the things you have, as part of the VST 3.5 specification is, Steinberg kind of pushed the envelope a bit. And let's say, as we did, just a few minutes ago, we did the, convert audio to MIDI, and I will just go ahead and do that process again. So I will remove this selected track. So we'll go to our vocal double click. We're in Vary Audio. Let's go to our functions, and we could extract MIDI. And you have different options here for the pitch extraction mode. So I would, like a lot of times you may run into different scenarios where, you just want just the notes. And a lot of times that's not going to carry the emotive expressiveness that people seek. But we could also do it with notes and static pitch bend data. But we could also choose to do our notes and note expression at the VST3 tuning curve. So you have kind of, some of the different options that you'd be able to do with your different pitch bend curve to kind of get more realistic natures with the extraction. So you could play with those settings there. All right, so we have, does Cubase 11 let you change the wave colors in the track? There are a number of different preferences. So if I wanted to, see kind of darker waveforms, we could do that. We could also, as we go to, let's say, some of the preferences, and these could be kind of scattered around. But if we go to like your event display, you could also say, I want my event opacity. So if you wanted like the parts to, be almost invisible, like the backgrounds to be invisible and only to see kind of the waveforms with kind of a container, you could do that. There's a lot of like Michael Wagner, kind of famed hard rock producer that's, they took that away and we brought it back as Michael complained. But you could also adjust. So let's say if I wanted to come here to audio, you could adjust the waveform brightness. So if you wanted more white waveforms, or if you wanted those to be darker, you could adjust kind of accordingly there. You could also have the waveform kind of outlined. So there are a couple of adjustments that you could do to kind of change kind of the color that you normally would see in kind of for the waveforms. So you can customize it quite a bit. Okay, hi Greg. It's Hammett again. Is 5.1 still the highest channel count I can render with Cubase? Also, it's the highest sample rate and bit depth. So you could have 5.1 is the biggest surround capability. If you need more, you could just upgrade to Nuendo, which is up to 22.2, and Atmos, and they just announced kind of Atmos authoring without any additional software or hardware tools needed. So the highest sample rate and bit depth will be 32-bit integer, or you could say 64-bit floating point, and 192K. Nuendo will do up to 384K for recording. Okay. Okay, so Michael Teams wants people to keep whacking the like button, so I won't disagree. So we see a question. Hi, why is Cubase so slow during the VST scan at startup? Is there a way to fix it? So generally the very first time it's slow because it's actually doing an analysis and diagnostics on the plugins. So as you work with that, it measures like the plugin latency amongst other things, and it can determine if the plugin is going to be problematic with a quick test. and that could cause the plugin to appear in the block list. So as you kind of work with that, so but after it's done that one time, it will only kind of rescan newly introduced plugins that way. But it's often just as a safety measure to make sure that plugins aren't going to be causing problems. So if you've taken plugins that appear in the block list and then want to reinstantiate them later, you could that could be causing some of the delays as well. All right, so we have someone from Romania checking in. Okay. Hi, Greg. What do you have your Cubase track color settings set to? It's easy on the eyes. Have you added more colors as well to Cubase? So, depending on the Hangout question, I mean, I generally kind of use the default colors for a lot of stuff. But yeah, like right now, I'm just using I think the default 16 colors. So, but and we have people that are like really who really study color combinations and user interface to make sure, unfortunately, a lot of people don't utilize color enough inside of Cubase and we'll have everything as being gray. But I think when you kind of start using color, then, throughout the interface that, it could be a lot more engaging. So, but everything I'm doing is now just default. So you just see question, can you set up lanes for MIDI? Certainly. So I'll just kind of do a quick MIDI recording here. So and it kind of works the same exact way as our audio. So let's say if I want to do a quick electric piano, so I will just come here and I'll put this into record. All right, and I'll not do retrospective record this time by accident. All right. And now when you come over here, each of those, depending on your record mode, so I have it cycle. So I will just keep it in, we'll say stacked, no mute. So then you could just see all of your lanes appear. So, but it really could be dependent upon what you actually have for your record mode for MIDI. So if you want new parts, if you want it merged or replaced. So. Okay, so just seeing some discussion. I think I may have missed it when I lost some of the questions from Paul about, I think about the live input activated. So let's go ahead and just do that on our chords. So I'll just... Okay, so I will go to this particular part. And let me just set a scale here. And since I'm a horrific keyboard player, I'm going to... let's say to D major. Okay. And I will just play some different chords going along here. I have someone trying to extend my car warranty again. All right. So I will just put this in quick step entry mode here. So I set my scale assistant for let's say D major, and I want to snap line. So I will play a C minor chord. Okay, so this is now B, E, G, okay, instead of C, E flat, G. And if I want to play a D minor chord, so now it played D, F sharp, A, it said D, F, A, and I'll do a G minor chord. All right, so it's just taking the chords I play in, so say D minor from here, and my F turns into, my F natural turns into an F sharp. I'll do like a D flat chord, so let's say... So it's automatically just kind of mapping directly to the scale. So, but let me know if that doesn't make sense, Paul. Sorry if I missed your initial question when I lost some comments in the feed. Okay, reading through comments. Okay, hi Greg. Is it possible to change the velocity sensitivity of a keyboard? For example, make velocity 10 through 110 the equivalent of 0 to 127. So you could... come over, let's say, to your live input. One of the things that you could do is, there's a couple of approaches to doing this. So say if you're on a MIDI track and you go to the input transformer, you could say, okay, I wanted to, at this point, will activate, and let's say you want to transform, trying to think of, so here, you could, I'm trying to think of a way to get like lower and higher. And it might be with under the MIDI modifiers. So let's come over here and activate the MIDI modifiers inspector. And there is velocity compression here, and you can set that to a value higher. So you could say, I want this to be like 110%. So that way it kind of works. That could expand the kind of range of velocity on your instrument as the tracks are playing back. So play around. If you have a, I think it was a DX7 originally, was only velocity 0 to 100, so the controller didn't spit out the full range if memory serves me correctly. But try to come over here to the velocity compression and put it to a value higher than 100%. Okay, question from Gareth. Can the included spectral layers remove plosives and mic knocks? Yeah, you could definitely do that. So let's say I'll just think I may have like a mic knock that I recorded. Let me just find a file quickly. Let me see which one this recording is. You may blow into the mic. All right. All right, so let's say we have this, and this is my voice, so it'll probably be a little confusing, but let's take a quick listen to it. You may also be talking and accidentally hit the microphone stand. So that's me hitting my microphone stand. You may also be talking and accidentally hit the microphone stand. So if I wanted to, fix that in spectral layers, we go again to audio to extensions. And I'll take this into kind of full screen. I like to kind of see the energy, what's going on here. So when we kind of zoom in, this is probably going to be just where we hear the microphone stand hitting these low frequencies. You may also be talking and accidentally hit the microphone stand. So if I wanted to get rid of that, and you could do this with the included spectral layers 1, but same concept. So I'm just going to say, let's take a rectangular selection. And I'll just take those particular frequencies, and I'll just hit delete a couple times. And let's click elsewhere. And now as I play it, you may also be talking and accidentally hit the microphone stand. So to go from, where we were to that is, pretty easy. Hit the microphone stand. And if you run into like breaths and plosives, you may blow into the microphone accidentally, where we had that kind of huge, when we look at our breath right here. You may blow into the microphone accidentally. Just that low end information at this point. Again, go to your spectral layers, and I'll just get to my audio. And this kind of launches it through ARA2. And, I like to kind of see that information kind of graphically laid out for us. So, and here, even in the spectral layers 1, we could just choose for this to be elliptical and say, okay, I just want to take that and click elsewhere. So if you had a plosive or, you may
breaths, blow into the microphone accidentally.
they could just be kind of eradicated that easily. So what was like a great vocal take, except for one mic stand kick accidentally, it's no problem. You could just, take care of that stuff with spectral layers very fast. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on. Okay, reading through comments. So J-Man, hello, Greg. Is there a way to lock the EQ band and sweep all at once? If not, that would be a killer feature. So let's jump here. Okay, so let's go ahead, just take a quick look. And let's say I just have drum loop going on. So I'm not sure if you want to sweep the frequencies, so when we're in the channel EQ, so let's say if I'm here, I could take this EQ and then if I hold down different kind of modifier keys, you may blow into the microphone accidentally. So if I hold down, my alt, as soon as I hold down my alt, I can restrain. So I can't move the amount of boost or cut or Q. And that will be kind of fixed. But if I hold down control or command, I can only move it and adjust the boost or cut. And I think if we hold down alt and, and with shift. So if I wanted to come here, I'm not sure it's what you want. So I could kind of keep only the frequency. I could adjust only the frequency while holding down alt or control or alt or option. And if I wanted to adjust only the amount of gain or cut, I could hold down control or command. And holding down shift, I could only adjust the Q, or how wide or narrow that EQ is. So you could hold down different modifier keys between alt, option, control, command, and shift to be able to kind of constrain movements within the EQ. But if that's not what you want, J-Man, just let me know if I'm misunderstanding. So question, can a channel strip be mapped? Yeah, so you can map those to, any function if you wanted to just kind of, go to even your quick control. So say, okay, I want my limiter and EQ and let's say saturation. So let's say if I have these going on, I could click on the little L button and say, okay, I want my first quick control to adjust, saturation. I want my second quick control to adjust my, my ratio, and I wanted my noise gate to be just set here for the threshold for the noise gate. If I'll just select a different band here, so we can say threshold for noise gate, select band 2, and then you could adjust, your other parameters and have your ratio. So you could map those to your quick controls quite easily. or anywhere else kind of throughout the program. Okay. So question, can we remove the F1 so that help does not come out? I think you could, move the, I think F1 kind of by most operating systems, it's kind of fixed to, be a Windows logoed or a Mac logoed program. So I think that might be kind of fixed for most applications if you want to be, like a certified operating system program. So we used to always get criticized for not having it. So, all right. So Terry Dean likes the concept of using 2 transport bars. So you see Jazz Dude mentioning that no, you can't remove the F1, but he has it pulled out of his keyboard. It's, the wonderful composer, Harry Gregson Williams. I remember his staff. I think he runs a Mac keyboard, but on Windows. And he kept hitting kind of the wrong buttons that didn't do anything or would do stuff he didn't want to. So his staff actually popped the buttons on the computer keyboard so he wouldn't hit it. So. Okay, just reading through. See different people using F2 for different functionality. And now Gareth's going to have a poll. Okay. Just reading through. Hi, Greg. Did half double speed media bay playback has been introduced in version 11. So it hasn't been introduced. I guess if you really wanted to do that, you could, switch the tempo to half speed. And if you put preview on, you could do that and kind of have a key command to toggle the tempo. But there wasn't anything new in 11 for that. And that's if you have set up for, so let's say if I come here and I had loops that I was auditioning. So say if I had, okay, so like I have these set to align beats to projects. Okay, so you could set up a project logical editor preset, probably just to, let's see if we could do this quickly. So let's see if we could adjust. So just. Okay, so say we want tempo and so right now we're at 100 beats per minute, and then let's see if I do that. So no, I mean, I think, we could kind of do this. So say media type is equal to tempo. We want to trim it by 0.5. So, but no, that no changes there with half or double tempo. Sorry about that. I'll mention it. Okay, reading through comments. Okay, still Cubase wants to hold transient content of that wave. Quite heavy task for my computer. I want to cut up the wave and just have that cut quantized sometimes. Okay, so when you're... So, if we have like just a quick loop here, you could, I'm not sure... so say if we go to our transients here and let's say, okay, I just want to, let's find our hit points. So we'll just kind of come right here. So say that's our hit points. And then you could, create slices. And at that point, if you wanted to, these are all sliced. And then you could just say, I want to quantize this to eighth notes and be able to select the different events and quantize them kind of as you see fit, so you can kind of slice and quantize as you see fit. But I'm not sure if I missed maybe the context of the first part of a question, maybe. So all right, so Neurotic Nexus joined us, but a little late. So glad to have you on a Hangout. Okay, so we see, thank you very much for this video. You're welcome. All right. All right, so can you show how to time stretch an audio file in 10.5, please? So it's really kind of the same exact functionality. So if I wanted, there's a couple ways to approach it. One is I'll just take this. You could do a sizing applies time stretch. So if you get to your sizing tool, you can now just say, I want that loop to fit into that amount of space. That will time stretch it. You could also go to audio and under processes, select time stretch. And here you can see it in bars, beats, or seconds. So, and have different algorithms. So you can say, okay, let's say this is 4 bars and 0 beats, or you want to do kind of your original tempo, and you could just say, okay, it's the source tempo, the original length is 300 beats a minute, or let's say it is 100 beats a minute, and you want it to be 137, and then you could just do your time stretching directly there. So that's really kind of all you have to do, and you could undo that as well. So you could do it kind of manually on a part, or just by under processes and choose your time stretch algorithm right from there. Okay, so from Robert Ray, Greg, is it possible after tempo extraction from an audio file to transfer it in the tempo track? So it automatically places it in the tempo track. So let's say if I wanted to go to like this project, and I do a tempo detection of my audio file. And what's going to do is it's going to automatically add the tempo track for us. And there you can see the tempo extraction automatically done directly for the file, and the tempo information is automatically placed into the tempo track for you. Any quick tip on cutting the S sound in vocal recording? So if you have like kind of a sibilant frequencies, let's see if I may have a file. But you know, the built-in de-esser EQ plugin works quite well. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. If you have the full spectral layers, there's a quite effective de-esser in there. All right, so let's say if we have all right, so let's go ahead.
Many words can be written with a small set of letters. In arithmetic, infinitely many numbers can be composed from just a few digits.
So I think we could even come over here to the tools and just have the de-esser. And at this point, you could just...
In language, infinitely many words can be written with a small set of letters. In arithmetic, infinitely many numbers can be composed from just a few digits with the help of the symbol 0, the principle of position, and the concept of base.
So, you know, that's...
Small set of letters. In arithmetic, infinite...
And there's also just kind of like a full plug-in version of that. So we'll just say... And you could have kind of different frequency ranges, kind of more for male or female voices. So if you wanted to just kind of...
Many numbers can be composed from just a few digits with the help of the symbol 0, the principle of position,
so you could kind of
and the
find
concept of base.
The frequency and be able to kind of just narrow out those sibilant frequencies quite effectively with that. So give that a shot, and you can do it from as a plugin or directly from the channel strip under Tools. All right. So I got to play bass on a project for Gareth, and just thank me for the fantastic bass. So it was a lot of fun. Let me know if you have other ones. It was fun to be just a bass player again. Okay. So we're seeing kind of same question asked a couple times about exporting stems with the effects on it. So we covered that a couple times. Okay, so reading through. Okay, just reading through comments. Lots of great discussion going on. I know we had some questions that were sent in. We'll get to those in just a little bit. Okay, so question, can you please show how to add third-party samples and wave into Media Bay? So the Media Bay can access, you know, any files that are on your system. So, you know, to add it, all you have to do is, you know, we'll go to your media, to Media Bay, and you'll have kind of a left zone here. And at this point, you could just see, all the files on your computer, and you could choose exactly which folders are active. So if I wanted to come here, you could just say, okay, let's go to under documents and to projects, and then I could say, these files I needed to actually activate for MediaBay, and MediaBay will scan those particular files, and it doesn't, if it's an audio file, a video file, MIDI loops from created from anywhere. Then as you kind of look in, you could just say, I'm looking for, audio files, in this particular folder or whatever you want to do. And if you're like, I really liked this folder, this is my project I'm working on, I could add as favorite. So just hit OK, and this, and I could kind of do the same with my MediaBay on my right hand side, and I'd see my file browser here, but I could just go to my favorites and say, oh, there's 22, so I just wanted to come right over there and be able to access those. Let's go back one step, and so that's how, so MediaBay will work with any audio file. So okay. So I see Diener dubs. Is there a way to auto colorize takes? I don't think there is, but it'd be very helpful and a time saver. So if you're doing kind of like, let's say just a quick recording here, it's kind of the tracks are, let's see, I'm not sure if we could auto colorize the takes. Let me just, I'll just put this into a quick cycle mode. And I'll just check. I don't think we could do it, but I'll just look. Yeah, so I think basically there won't be a way to automatically do it, but let's do just a couple passes here. So, as we open up, I assume when you say takes that they're going to be in lanes. But I'll just see if I can. So you can manually set them. But it doesn't look like it's automatically updates it, but I can see where that might be useful, and I'll pass it along. To see comment, Greg needs another project for demoing the general stuff. I'm hearing it already in my dreams. don't want to even imagine about him. So I will gladly take a project from someone as long as it could be played on YouTube without someone, taking down a video for a copyright notice or something. So, okay. So I just see Gareth asked, I played bass on a track for Gareth last night. So he asked, which bass did I use? So I think last night I have 18 or 19 basses. So I used to have a problem with it. But it's a Warwick double buck Corvette. So it's kind of a beautiful instrument. So I'm a big fan of the Warwicks. I used to always, when I was gigging more kind of pre-COVID, I was always playing a Warwick fretless. Okay, we're doing okay on time. Okay, so we have people checking in from Denmark. And see comment, Greg wants a bass player, always a bass player. It's true. Yeah. Okay, just reading through comments. Okay, so let's go ahead and just seeing. So I'm going to go ahead to some of the questions that were mailed in. All right, so someone had attached a picture, and I don't know how to get the gridded look, but I like it. I want to get this gridded look on my new computer too, as it's really helpful for me. Can you please guide me how to achieve kind of the gridded look? So what I think was going on was this was look like in the video, in the picture here, it was set to seconds. And we may have just kind of come over here. So I'm going to set this to kind of trying to recreate this look in the picture that was sent to me. All right, I'm just going to get rid of my timecode offset here. So, so it looks kind of like, and let me just, so as you kind of go into the grid lines here, and let me see if there's an adjustment in preferences. So what I think is going on in a grid is that I'm just going to look at the picture one more time. Just do a new project real quickly. See if I can recreate this grid. Okay. So I think what it was the grid was kind of a finer resolution. So let's say. So it looked like it was trying to recreate this. So say. So you can see kind of the 16th notes here, even when you have seconds as the bar line. So you can see these kind of divisions going on here. So that's kind of what you do to kind of get that grid resolution of that particular file. So it kind of looks like you have it set to like triplets, like maybe like a 16th note triplet grid. So, and you could also adjust kind of some of the, we'll add a signature track. And now we used a grid line. And some of the versions, like the grids can be adjusted. So you can see kind of the grid lines here that can be adjusted. But sometimes on earlier versions, the depending how you zoom in can also kind of have a difference. And so, but you can see kind of the underlying grid lines there. All right, so I'll move on to next question. Okay, so recently switched to Cubase from Pro Tools. And so this question, in older versions, you could color pretty much everything and anything in the project window, even the frame of it. But now apparently some options have gone away. The transport bar cannot be bigger like before in time display. On it is white, so hard to see, small on top of everything. Can color be added to all the numbers in the transport bar so they could be visible and aesthetically it would look so much better with a color like green or purple, etc.? It's a pretty transport bar, but it can't be bigger and have some colors on it. Just imagine for a second having all the numbers, timing, pre-roll numbers, etc. on the bar illuminated by a nice bright green color or something else. Please bring this to the software attention. Software developers, see if they could bring a little bit of the transport bar since you've already have most of it complete. Amazing DAW out there. So kind of with, some of the colors here, and I think some of the design decisions, they also have to take into account, people with vision problems and people with color blindness. So sometimes having that green, sometimes, those color choices can disappear for some users. But I'll kind of bring it to the attention of the developers, but I think the white is, I can understand if you're coming from our program, but obviously the white, like that stands out pretty well to me, and it's pretty clear, and I have not such great vision personally, so I like the contrast as opposed to like a purple on black. That could be a little, I think harder to see, but I'll bring that to the attention. Excuse me, of developers and pass it along. Okay, so we had this is a Spectral layers question, kind of from last week. Hi, Greg Soren, Sir N68. in Sweden. You wanted me to email you if you could figure it out. I wanted to know what the device setting in Spectral Layers Pro called Spectral Layers Bridge is about. So what the Spectral Layers Bridge is about is sometimes using it with Pro Tools, and I think with Pro Tools hardware, when you hand off to Spectral Layers and back and forth between Pro Tools and Spectral Layers, is sometimes the audio communication may get lost between those two, and that's what the Spectral Layers Bridge does. So it kind of establishes kind of the communication protocol between those two. All right. Okay, so open up a project for this next question. I think it's from the same person, from Soren in Sweden. And thanks for all the wonderful questions from everyone. Okay, so we just had a question. Okay, so it's about like if you make a 10-second MIDI loop of fast playing notes with the sound of black bass combi, which is this sound, that comes with Absolute Collection Supervision's multi-correlation meter, and the highest resolution will show a lot of red out of phase in the low end of the spectrum. Can you show how to fix out of phase issues like that? So let's go ahead and I'll pretend to be films composer. So I will write one note and chop it up a bunch. All right, so I will come here and just kind of draw in a particular note. Okay, and I'm going to chop this note up. Scientifically, of course. All right, so now I have a new composition for Gareth. All right, so it's like... All right, now let's look at that in our phase, in our multi-correlation meter in Supervision. So I'll just do a new instance of it here. All right, so let's go ahead and I'll just put this on a quick loop. All right, so you can see some of the frequencies that will get out. So how you could fix this is really kind of one of those things that you probably would kind of fix at the source. So let's go ahead and take a look at the patch itself. All right, so when we go to this, we're going to have like 3 layers of sounds. And if we click on, edit, and then go to your different layers, you may just have to, as you do this, adjust kind of the phase between the different layers here. And, this way, because, when you're having probably a phase issue like this, is that you want these, like the 3 layers themselves are probably slightly out of phase. So let's say I switch between layer 3 and layer 2. That's pretty close, but let's go to layer 1. So now if we were to look at it, so you have kind of less, but at that point you probably want to adjust it at the source. And that could be, like the phase within, the oscillators or filter. So you could kind of, play along with, the different phase of different parts of the sounds and get those aligned. And that's a way to kind of solve that. Okay, so we have a question. My name is Marion. I need your help. I need to confirm to me that this is a bug or that there is something that I do not understand, although I doubt about this. The problem, signal bleeding in Groove Agent SE, latest version. I use Cubase 11 on Windows 10, latest update. To reproduce the problem, load Groove Agent SE. So I think I have the particular kit loaded up here. And the R&B kit 01, which is what we have here. So if I wanted to just... Okay, so click, hit the D sharp 1 pad in the lower corner. You'll hear the sound of the clap together with the reverb, although all the sends of bus 2, the bus to which the pad is assigned, sent to, or set to minimum. If I turn the bus 2 level to minimum, the reverberation sound is still coming out. So I see no routing to that reverb. Nevertheless, the reverberated sound comes out of it. Where does that reverberated sound come from? So when we're in like a beat agent kit, and I want to, so we hear kind of that reverb. What I would do is just go to Edit and go to the amplifier section. And here you see the aux sends, so that are being sent out. So if I wanted more reverb or no reverb, and if I wanted this, so this is going out to aux send 1. So when I go to my mixer and then I click on my aux sends, we can see that this is reverb. So if I wanted to take that, let's go back to edit. So I want it, let's say delay. So now if I wanted to, have a bunch of reverb, and it's not the most intuitive place, but each pad can be set to different amounts. So if I wanted my kick to have a lot of delay for some reason. So you could do stuff like that. So that's where those particular sounds, where the reverb routing is. So you could have this kind of, so you kind of look in here and it's understandable, but each pad, when you click under the amp section, that's where you could have the effects, routed to the internal effects. So give that a shot. Other problem which might be related to the first one. In the Groove Agent Operation Manual, Mixing and Effect Handling, Kits Mixer, it says that there is an output section where we could select one of the 16 available outputs, but I see no output section in the Kits Mixer. I think it might be a big routing bug. I would like to route the dry signal of the pads to different outputs to apply third-party effects, but every time I try to use Groove Agent, I find this problem. Unknown effects are applied to the signal and I stop using it. All right, so I think we fixed that. But if we wanted to route it to different outputs, when we go to the main tab here, you'll see the output bus. So I'll go ahead and I'll just open up the mix console here. So now all these sounds are going out of this output. So I want this sound to go out of one output, this sound to go out of bus 3. So, and at this point, you could just say, I want that to go out of output 2. So now this kit, that sound is going out of this fader. This kit is going out of that fader. So if I wanted this, I would just select the output and say, okay, this is output 3, output for. And these outputs are dynamically added. So that's where it's kind of done here. So you get a main, and then you see your output assignments here. Now, if it was another, like an acoustic agent kit, and that's probably where the manual is taking you with that. So if it was an acoustic agent kit, the output routing is done in the mixer. So I will come right over here, and we'll just say... So the acoustic agent, where it's going to be kind of more of a fixed entity for, like, you know, what sounds. So as we want to, you know, play this, when we go to the mixer in the acoustic agent, this is where we could send to the 32 outputs for a kick to one out, a snare to an independent out, etc. But with a beat agent kit, it's going to be, you just select the pad and, you know, add your bus, and you could kind of see it indicated in the mix console as we just kind of, as soon as a sound is routed, I could now, let's say this goes to bus 5, that mixer channel is added, and they're all added. And to get rid of the effects, again, like, oh, why am I hearing effects? Go to the amp section, and then just make sure that you select the pad and hit the sends and adjust the sends just directly like that. And you should be all set and good to go. So if that doesn't help, just send a quick email to clubcubase@steinberg.de. Okay, I got stumped last week on kind of had my brain cramp, but how to remove one of the meters in supervision. So let's say we have like an amazing plugin going on, and everything is, you know, we built up multiple meters in supervision. As you hover over the, you know, and you wanted to remove one. So, and I was kind of looking up here, but as you hover in the right-hand corner of the meter, you could now see a little X. And once you click on that X, that will, all right, and we won't install Adobe Flash Player Update. Have to love that. So you'll see this little X, and once you click on that X, that will remove that particular meter zone. So just kind of hover in the upper right-hand corner of the meter, and that will allow you to get rid of the meter. And if you want to just kind of jump back to where you were. So, and it's not visible until you're in the upper right-hand corner. So, okay. Okay. So, question. Hey, Greg, is the MIDI track delay accessible via Project Logical Editor preset or key command? So if you wanted to move MIDI notes, so let's say if we'll blow this up here. Okay, so I'll just select all these notes. Okay, so let's say I wanted to just shift these particular notes in time. Okay, so what I could do, and I'm not sure if it's, you know, there's a separate MIDI delay plugin. So if I come here, there is, so if I wanted to shift the notes around, I could do that in the Project Logical Editor. So I will come here and say, okay, so we'll go to Project Logical Editor. I'm going to, let's just say, select all the notes first. Okay, or maybe just select the event itself. Okay. And so what I want to do is say media type is equal to MIDI position. We could say, subtract, let's say a 16th note. Okay, so now I will take this, and as we zoom in, I could just hit apply. And let me so you could adjust kind of the timing of let me just try adjusting this with container type equals track. So at that point, you could adjust that, but there's also kind of a MIDI delay that a lot of people aren't necessarily so hip to, where you could have Cubase regenerate. It's called MIDI echo. So I will come here and so I could just hit one note. Or if I, just want to put that on. So I just hitting the note once. And you could have it delay. So that's not really controllable by the Project Logical editor, but you can adjust kind of the timing and position of notes. Okay, another question. Really enjoy the Hangouts. I was wondering if it's possible to set up a macro that would allow me to create a MIDI event on the selected track with a quarter note on middle C, render in place, delete the MIDI event, and reactivate the selected instrument track. A bit of context, I'm looking to quickly create drum samples to drop into Geist. So I don't know of a way in a macro to insert a note at a particular position, at a particular pitch, through like a key command. So I don't know of a way to do that in a macro. And I was trying to come up with something, a couple of different workarounds, but nothing that was really easy. I could see if I could do some research in Geist, but I know like if you have even in Hallian 6, it's kind of, if you're doing samples, you could capture the MIDI note and play the sample all simultaneously. So, maybe there's another workaround to do that as well. Okay. Question. Is there an alternate way to set up a quick cycle record without having to move the left and right locators? Okay, so let's say we have our left and right locators and we want this as a cycle record. So let's come over here to punch points. So, and I will choose to have the punch points activated, but not to have them locked to the locator. So we'll go. Okay, so let's say if I want this to set punch into project cursor position and punch out. Okay, so let me just try this with the new audio project here real quick. Here, I'll just. Okay, so let's say if I want to. All right, so I'm just going to hit. Okay, so right now, this is my left and right locator. And then I could have my punch in and punch out points. So I could just come here. So my left and right locators are there. I set my punch in. So it's going to punch in. It's going to punch out here on the red. And then I still have my left and right locators set independently. So you want to go to transport and go to punch points. You could set the punch in, punch out, and then you could just hit I and O. So you could set it to the project cursor position, and if you wanted to enter it in, you could do that as well. And that way your punch in, punch out could be independent of your left and right locators. Okay. Hey, Greg, I'm working with MIDI and automation. I'm having an issue. The automation info from my mod wheel MIDI CC1 is showing up in the key editor, but it's not showing up in the automation lanes in my project window. This is frustrating because it's very hard to copy and paste or duplicate the automation on a grid in the key editor. When you hold down Option to drag or duplicate instead, it pulls up a pen tool rather than the range selection tool that's available in the key editor. Is this a glitch, or am I missing something? When I select MIDI CC1 mod wheel in a project window, there's no automation shown. But I know automation is there because it's working to affect the sound. Let me know what you think. So let's say I will come over here. Let's just add a quick synth sound. All right, let me just. All right, so I move my modulation wheel. I kind of hear that sound. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just record directly here. So I'll just record on this track, and I'll just play kind of one note. Okay, so I now double click and we could see, I will just click here and let's just show, we'll just switch this to modulation. So you can see my modulation data is there as MIDI. And if you want, you could just kind of, your modulation will just kind of can show up. Looks like it's kind of just right there. So let's say we have, okay. So what you want to do is, this is MIDI data that's written into the actual MIDI part itself. Now, if you want it to, and as you come over here, if you wanted that to show up as automation, go to the MIDI menu and you'll see a CC automation setup. So here we could say, okay, for modulation, I wanted this to go to an automation track. Okay, so now I will come and I'm just going to re-record some notes with automation. Then it shows up directly as your automation lane. So go to MIDI, to CC automation setup, and just say you want modulation to go directly to an automation track as opposed to MIDI data that's inside of the editor itself. Okay, so I think that's all of our mailed in questions. Let me jump back to our live feed. Thanks for all the great questions. Okay, I'm missing all the great discussions here. All right, we'll be going for a little. We have about maybe another 12 minutes or so. Okay. Okay, hello, Greg. How can I copy my Cubase 10.5 settings and preferences to Cubase 11? So again, just go to Edit, go to your Profile Manager, export from Cubase 10.5, import into Cubase 11. Okay, just reading through questions. We'll try to get through. Okay, so we have a question. When you freeze a VST instrument, what's the difference between freeze instrument and channel? Thanks, and happy holiday. So when you have, let's say if we have effects on our VST instrument, such as inserts, I have a reverb, a delay. When I freeze the instrument, it's just going to, take my MIDI information and render that. But when I freeze instrument and channel, it's going to take my EQs and my inserts and all those different effects, my channel strip, and include those in the rendered file. All right, so I see a question from Nick. Hi, Greg. Where can I send Cubase feature requests? You can email them to me, but there's also a feature request area on the Steinberg.net forums as well. So, okay. So I just see automation keeps changing after I stop the song. So generally the automation stops when when the program stops, but there's also when if there's something like an LFO in an instrument that's constantly changing. So I'm not sure if it's volume automation or maybe like a synth parameter that's adjusting. So sometimes synth parameters will just so sometimes the synth parameters are set to continue after, onwards without anything going on, like through an LFO where it's doing low frequency oscillation. So, okay. So hi, how do you alter the time base of multiple tracks at once? Okay, so let's say our tracks here are set all to musical time base. Okay, so I will come here, and I think it's a project logical editor preset that we could do this with. So let's get to our project. Toggle time domain for selected tracks. So let's say those are all selected. So I'll go to my project logical editor presets and under tracks. And now they're all changed to musical from linear, or changed to linear from musical. So again, just go to your project menu to project logical editor presets under tracks, and you could toggle time domain. right. I see a great point from Jazz Dude. A macro can auto color because you could add a lane and name it like track 1, and so on, and simply tell the macro track 1 use color 1. So yeah, that's a great point. So yeah, so I could, if we get maybe a little more time on the next Hangout, we could show that. But you could set it up through the Project Logical Editor to do that. That's a really good workaround, Jazz Dude. You're smart. Is it possible to display the waveform of only one side of a stereo track? So I don't know of a way. I know some programs kind of do that, and I've always been a bit kind of confused by it, because, like assuming that the left and right were the same when they're not often. So I don't know of a way to do that. Okay. Okay, so I've been waiting 2 hours. Sorry to be impatient, but it would be great to get my question answered. Could you demonstrate how to do 808 glides, glides with sampler track using an 808 one shot? So we'll show this. Sorry if maybe your question kind of fell through. I lost some of the questions. Sometimes I lose the chat, but let's... Okay. So if we wanted to come, let's say I have kind of a typical 808 type of sound. So I just want to come here. So we could place this into mono. So, if we wanted to, we could, play lovely chords. Probably not what you want to do. So we could place this into monophonic mode. And we could enable finger mode. So if I play the notes separated as opposed to legato, and legato means holding down one key until the next key starts. But I'm going to just hold this down and go. So, but if I separate those notes, there's no glide. But if I hold the first note down, you could just do that. And if you want to adjust the length of the glide, you could do that. Or if you want it to be faster, or somewhere in the middle. Now, what's kind of cool is as you hit the second note, you actually, it plays the sample from the beginning of the sample. Unless, by normal sampling, it would go this. But if I activate this little icon here for the 2 eighth notes, it plays the sample. It changes the pitch of the sample in the middle of the sample instead of replaying it from the start of the actual sample. So you could do stuff like that. Okay, so audio track, cutting a region short and going into a different region, then adding processing made the region original length, and I had to pull it back again. Why? So check when you go into this preference. So if it's like a shared clip, what it sounds like it might be, if you go to editing to audio, you can see on processing shared clips, you may want to just try changing that to create new version. All right, let's see if there's one or two last minute questions. See lots of great discussion going on. You're going to be wrapping up pretty soon. Okay. I see Gareth says he needs supervision plugin, so it's really easy. Just do an upgrade to Cubase 11, and you're all set. Okay, lots of great discussion. See if I can find the last minute question before we wrap up here. Okay. So, hi, Greg. Is it possible to fill metadata directly into Cubase? So you could do that within the media bay. So if you have an audio file here, you could go into media bay. So go to media bay, and then activate the right-hand zone. And then as you would select a particular file, you could enter in your own metadata directly here if you go to settings, and you could add your own. All right, so with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up again. Because of the holiday in the United States, we won't be doing a Hangout on Friday, but next Tuesday we'll be doing another one. I hope that for all the people in America that you have a wonderful Thanksgiving with your holidays, and everyone please stay safe. And we'll see everyone on next Tuesday. And thank you so much for all the wonderful questions. Take care.